Familiar with by now. To my far right, Paul Achar, a speech coach and communications expert, and of course Professor Edward Kisiangani, who's back with us again. Thank you both for coming in. I hope you had a great weekend and a great week as well. Let's start by taking a look, of course, at the clips that we have for you this evening. Really, it will be about one President-elect, Uhuru Kenyatta, and Prime Minister Raila Odinga. They've been trading barbs the entire week over various issues. On the one hand, Uhuru saying Raila should stop politicizing the case that is before the Supreme Court. And on the other, Raila telling Uhuru, since that case is still on, you shouldn't be going around using state resources. So let's take a listen.
Tuwe na uwezo wa kujua ya kwamba tukisema tunaenda kotini basi wache koti ifanye kazi yake. Hakuna faida ya kuendelea kuongea. Sisi zote tunangojea waamuzi wa koti yao na magari. Hiyo tunaongea hivi na vile na vile. Tutulie, tupoe, hakuna shida. Hakuna faida ya uchochezi, hakuna faida ya vurugu. Basi baada ya miaka mitano twende siasa tena.
My brother, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, has challenged me not to politicize the petition which is in the courts. Of course, I'm not politicizing the case because the case is political. We are talking about a political office. But I want to challenge my brother not to behave as if he's already a president who has been handed over instruments of power. Because in as far as we are concerned, the instruments of power are still with President Mwai Kibaki. So desist from using state resources, the motorcades, the aircrafts and so on. Those are still premature. And therefore don't behave as if you're already a president in office. That itself violates the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you.
All right, two very clear issues come out from both of them, and I want to begin with Uhuru's narrative. And he says Kenyans are tired about politics and that Raila should stop politicizing the case. Are Kenyans tired? Have Kenyans actually moved on from the March 4th poll?
I think, Anne, that's wrong from the president-elect. Kenyans are not tired of politics. They are still interested in this case and they are still talking politics because remember, half of the country didn't vote for Uhuru if we go by the results that we have. So therefore, some are hurting. They still are hurting and that's why they have sought redress in court. So they are still talking politics and they will continue talking politics and it's a way of life. But more important also you should, which we need to see, is the point of view from which both Uhuru and Raila are talking from. I think Uhuru is enjoying some kind of support, you know, he is enjoying state security, which he is supposed to do. He's sometimes receiving what you call red carpet welcome. When he goes out, it was rolled out. Raila's position is that that is against the Constitution. I think to the point that the Constitution wants a president who has taken oath, Raila is right. And any other law, if you look at Section 2, Article 2 of the Constitution, which says that any other law which is made in this country that violates the Constitution is null and void. So the laws that try to implement the Constitution, these laws that are passed by Parliament, so long as they violate the Constitution, then they are null and void.
So
but Uhuru's point of view is that the law on transition was passed, and that law is the one that is allowing him to enjoy this kind of protection, and therefore, according to the law, it's right. But that law, Raila is arguing that it is violating the Constitution. Uhuru is saying it doesn't. So the question here is legal. When you are in conflict with any other person, any other citizen in this country, so long as the parliamentary law conflicts with the actual Constitution, then we go by the Constitution.
At what point does the Assumption of Presidents Act, which is suppose the law that you're referring to, and that is the law that prescribes what the president-elect should receive in terms of security information, in terms of even security detail that he gets, etc. At what point does it contradict the Constitution?
At the point that, for example, until recently, that there have been some statements that have been made including privatization of the Mombasa port. There have been also statements about fertilizer and giving people money. There are statements which look like policy statements which should be made by President Kibaki because he's still under oath until he's removed. But they are not being made by President-elect. And also, when he arrives, for example, today in Eldoret, a red carpet is being rolled out.
And that is unconstitutional?
No, it is giving the impression that, that we have reserved this red carpet to our president. President Kibaki is still alive and is still in office. So that is the point that probably is being raised, that probably is being treated like a president when there is already a sitting president. So we go back to the constitution.
Hold on, Professor.
Yes.
Uhuru Kenyatta, whether we voted for him or not, has been declared president-elect by the IEBC. And unless the Supreme Court should on Saturday tell us otherwise, is he then not entitled to the privileges that come with that office, including the fact that he's supposed to receive regular security briefs, that he does have a limited amount of state resources put to him, save for the fact that he's not passing any laws? And I know you've talked about policy statements, but really he does not sign anything as President of the Republic of Kenya. And having said that, even Raila mentions that the instruments of power remain with President Kibaki.
What I would think about this, what we are in, Anne, is not a personal matter, it's a constitutional matter, it's a legal matter. Suppose today the High Court rules that Uhuru probably, I mean the Supreme Court rules that Uhuru didn't win properly. Now, do we start unrolling the red carpet? And when we unroll the
why wouldn't we?
And when we unroll it causes an embarrassment, a legal embarrassment. So what I would do as Uhuru is that I will continue with the briefing. They will give me the briefing, but I'll tell people until the High Court makes a ruling, I don't want anybody to come near me and start treating me as if I'm president. That would enhance his stature. So he's not doing that, and I think he's falling into a trap that could embarrass him in
I want
future.
to bring in Paul, and so that we can separate the two issues. There is the legal question as to whether or not he's actually entitled to the things that he's receiving. And so far, barring a constitutional interpretation on that, Professor Kisiangani, you can't say he's not entitled to them. Quite frankly, should Raila have been declared president-elect, he would be enjoying the very same thing.
But is it right?
So, no, wait, hold on a minute.
Yes.
We're talking about the law and morality, and I think sometimes the two are far apart.
Yes.
And that's why I want to bring in Paul into this discussion. Leave aside what the law prescribes that Uhuru as president-elect is entitled to. Do you think, though, there would have been value, given the fact that this is still a question that is before the court, given the fact that still, as you've said, half the country did not vote for this man? Many people may still feel aggrieved by what happened on March the 4th. That he should have said, let me take the briefs, the security detail that is dictated, but perhaps the brouhaha that comes with the red carpet, I don't know why this red carpet is irking people so much, or the outriders, or all that sort of thing that comes with the office of the president, that he should have said, what, let's relax on this, it's not necessary right now, we could roll it all out, after a possible swearing in.
Remember, there's a battle for public perception. We have the judicial process which is ongoing, but at the same time, all the president-elect and the prime minister are trying to project a presidential image. They're trying to win what I would call the battle of public perception. You could argue that he's being a bit presumptuous, but it would depend on the divide that you're on. However, a couple of things that I also notice when the president-elect is speaking. I noticed that he takes on a tone that seems a bit frustrated. You're looking at somebody, at some point he flips his hands backwards like that. It seems as though he's raring to go. He's looking forward to getting what I would call executive power, but something is holding him back, and he's powerless. He can't do anything, so the frustration seems to be coming out. You also do notice that he takes on a mocking tone towards the end of that clip. Now, I would fault him when the exact no, he seems to. I think I can't quite recollect the exact words that verbatim that he uses, but he seems to take on when he says miaka tano, 5 years, wait. He seems to be taunting the prime minister, and in my view, that does not look extremely presidential. Remember, Prof, you've said that half of the country also did not vote for him. It's incumbent upon him to try and gain the goodwill of each and every person. On the battle of public perception, something that he loses out is his eyes. I think we've mentioned that repeatedly. We've said that he needs to probably look a little clear. He seems to be...
He is very red-eyed and seems
to be
worn
stressed,
out,
and the eye bags, you know, doesn't look... It doesn't inspire confidence. He needs to be able to work on that. Then you notice a group of people standing behind him. Now, all of these candidates need to remember, yes, all of these candidates need to remember that it's not only the rally, the audience that they're addressing at that public rally. There are people who will be watching at home and scrutinizing. Now, when you see an image like that on TV, it doesn't look too presidential. This guy, I think Honorable Senator-elect Sonko, has a cap pulled low, extremely close to him. You know, those are some things that in the battle of public perception he needs
Prof,
to be able to lose.
I beg your pardon. Please let me bring you back into the conversation, because Paul did mention the question of, you know, sounding, perhaps I could say condescending. In his speech, if I could quote verbatim some of the things you're saying, siasa ipoe, itulie, wananchi wamechoka, and does it sound to you like a dismissive attitude?
It is what worries the other side of Kenya that did not vote for him. The other side of Kenya that did not vote for him, which is substantial, if you look at the figures, it hasn't settled in siasa. For them, siasa has not ended until the Supreme Court makes a ruling. So when he says Kenyans are tired, one wonders, is he speaking for the people, the 6 million who voted for him, or is he speaking for the 6 plus the 5 point something who voted for Raila? So that's why Paul's argument comes in, that Uhuru should start thinking that he's as a president-elect, if he is confirmed, he's going to look after really diverse interests, and he must not be the one to stop the game. He must tell us, let us reach the referees there. The referee will stop the game when the referee declares that. So that's not quite right for him, and I think he can change. But I just wanted to chip in on what Paul has said with regard to the image that he's portraying. He can, if he's confirmed by weekend, he will be our president. He needs to tell the friends he has had in rallies to dress properly when they stand behind a president. I don't think that anybody would like that kind of image of people in hats, necklaces, and so on.
Tell them right now, look into the camera.
Yes, sitting behind a president. That president must have an international appeal. We are not having a Juakali president. We are going to have a president who must sit with us in the UN offices, go and visit Geneva, and sit in the Commonwealth. He does not need that crowd. I think he must start vetting the crowd that stands.
Is the substance of the grey matter not what?
No,
isn't that what counts?
But the image that is coming out, you know, Uhuru Kenyatta should have an image. And it's an image of people who are well dressed for that occasion when he's in front of them.
Could the image also be a man of the people, who is what basically Sonko has managed to tailor himself as, like it or not? I know he had his rough time with the press, you know, from the punching of walls, etc. But a man of the people, I can wear hats, I can hang.
Remember the season that we are in. Each one of them is trying as much as possible to look presidential. Let's wait after next week when the court gives its verdict and we know who wins the president. He can go ahead and, you know, portray the man of the people image. But for now, there's a battle of to win the perception of the Kenyan public as to who looks presidential. But I won't also leave out the Prime Minister on this. I also notice on that clip, he seems very subdued. You know, that's not... Raila Odinga is a spirited communicator, which means that he has a vibrant way of speaking. In this particular instance, you see him subdued. You look at his dressing. For, you know, that tie.
What was wrong with the man?
Where did you see it's some flowery tie? Doesn't look at all presidential.
Well, you have something against flowers?
No, I don't have anything against flowers, but we are talking about the presidential image.
I think, Paul, Paul, what's your saying?
Then look at the jacket that he also wears. It's a bit ill-fitting. at this particular time, each of them is trying to, you know, portray a presidential image.
I think what you're saying is probably right, but don't you think that probably that is deliberate by Raila Odinga? He has been a little combative in the past, even during the elections. But now he seems to be slowing down and picking on a rare humility, and this humility seems to be tailored to attract public attention and public sympathy. He is in a vulnerable state, and the more vulnerable he looks in front of the public, the more he can be believed. He cannot act presidential material because the polls show that he didn't have the numbers up to where we are. So he must look vulnerable, and that vulnerability might be working in his favor. Maybe even from the point of view of the people, the public court.
It's a fine balance between wanting to invoke public sympathy and also looking in charge and in authority and looking presidential. It's a fine line, I think.
Very interesting. So, Prof, definitely in your opinion, you feel Raila's narrative, and of course, alluding to the conversation that we had earlier as far as the monopoly of power, if you like, and the carpets and the jets, etc. He is really winning sympathies on that. He
might be winning sympathies, but I'm more interested in the group that was also standing behind him. They look like robots. You know,
they look like security.
They look like robots who are just about to say everything yes, yes, yes. When he becomes combative, they say yes. When he becomes humble, they say no, yes. They look like they're just waiting to act like robots. I think that is the bad side of it.
I also noticed something that I need maybe to raise up. When he starts speaking and he says, "My brother Uhuru," he passes his lips. There's no love between the two of them. That's a non-verbal cue right there.
Look for it at home, eh? Look for it at home. There's a problem, huh? All right. Okay, let's move on. Still, of course, with those two gentlemen, and we'll be listening to what they both had to say today. Of course, Uhuru Kenyatta was addressing a church service in which basically he said that he was glad that the country has found its way back to unity since the ugly events of the period immediately after the last general election. And Raila Odinga also in a Palm Sunday service talking about truth, his version of truth and how it sets one free. Let's listen in.
Mimi nataka kusema ya kwamba siku ya leo niko na furaha tele kuwa pamoja nanyi. Na furaha yangu yatokana kwa sababu tuko hapa katika uwanja vile baba askofu ametuambia, uwanja ambao miaka 5 ambayo iliyopita ulikuwa uwanja wa kilio, uwanja wa it was an agony field. Watu walikuwa wanalia hapa, wengine walikuwa wamepoteza ndugu zao, wengine mali yao. Lakini sasa baada ya miaka 5 tuko hapa tukisherehekea Palm Sunday na furaha, tukiwa mwaka wa Jubilee. Mwaka wa Jubilee, na tunasherehekea na furaha, wananchi wakiwa na amani, wananchi wakiwa wameungana, wananchi wakiwa wameshikana mikono kama ndugu na dada. Hiyo ni furaha kwetu, kwa sababu msingi wa siasa zangu na Mheshimiwa Ruto ulikuwa tuone siku kama ya leo ikiwa imefika, na tunamshukuru Mwenyezi Mungu.
The truth shall set you free. That's what the Bible says. And therefore we're saying that there must be a truth. As Desmond Tutu said, there must first be truth, then justice, then reconciliation. So we're saying without the truth there can be no justice. Without justice there can be no reconciliation. Without reconciliation there can be no peace. Without peace there can be no development. So you must start first by the truth. What is the truth? Because it's the truth that shall set us free. What is the truth? And this is what we are going to know very soon, what the truth is about. This country has experienced a struggle for the last 50 years. the struggle between two forces pulling in opposite directions. The forces for change and reform and democracy versus the forces for retention of status quo.
All right, so on the one hand, it is the year of Jubilee. On the other, the clock ticks towards a moment of truth. And I want to go back to Uhuru Kenyatta because he remains, I think, with the narrative that even amongst his supporters may be troubling in as far as you know, rubbing in the Jubilee factor. It's the year of Jubilee, and of course his coalition is called Jubilee, so he's playing on that. And second, you know, being very adamant that the country has moved on, we're all working together hand in hand as brothers and sisters. And while to a large degree I would want to agree, because our interests are peace, there is still a lot of healing that is yet to take place. There's still a kind of hangover, if you like, from 2007, and the fact that we are in court right now may not necessarily be helping the matter. Paul, as a speech expert, what message do you think in these final days before we hear from the Supreme Court on its ruling, what message should the President-elect be putting out there?
He should aim to reconcile citizens. He should aim to unify the country. He shouldn't seem to engage in rhetoric that pits us against them. It's one country. You're going to be the president of everybody, not just people who voted for you. So that needs to come out more. I would expect him to be reaching out now to the rest of the millions who didn't vote for him. I would expect him to do that in his communication. He seems also to be, you know, a bit subdued, and he's also, I think he's trying hard to project humility. Probably the audience that he's talking to, he's speaking to a religious audience.
And also an audience that is made up of his supporters, right? Because he was in the rift there, but certainly should be aware that there's a national message.
There are people who are watching back at home, whether we were not in the Rift Valley with him, but here we are watching and seeing what he's saying. And what are we expecting? We're expecting somebody who is going to unite us. We're expecting somebody who's going to deliberately reach out to the rest of the country.
Professor, let me bring you in, especially on Raila's message. And part of the thing that he says is, you know, there is a struggle right now, two forces, and we've heard this right from the campaign trail, two forces pulling in opposite directions. One is for reform, one is for the retention of the status quo. And we do know, of course, history does credit Raila Odinga for being, you know, for really fighting for democracy and really fighting for reform. But does it then fault Uhuru and Ruto? Does history prove that they are anti-reformists?
I think what Raila is doing, as he said, this is a political matter. He's still playing politics. And what he's doing in an indirect manner is challenging the Republic and also challenging Uhuru. That look who is going to be our president. I'm a reformer, he's not a reformer. That is the simple message he's trying to pass, that you have voted in an reformer and you can look 50 years, because he fought 50 years, and he says, you know, these people are not reformers. But of course we know very well.
Is it factual?
We know, first of all, I can answer it this way. It can be true and false. On one hand, you remember in 2005, the Ruto and Uhuru ganged up with Raila to defeat the referendum. And they were saying that that constitution was not very good. It was against the interests of the people of Kenya. At that point, I remember Uhuru sharing a podium with Raila and saying they will never talk tribalism. They also want reforms, and they will stand for change. To that extent, you cannot deny that, because it is already authenticated. But in terms of the resume, the general resume or CV for reforms, if you go back to the 90s and probably the 80s, probably Raila has a better resume, and he's capitalizing on his strong point to communicate the point that he would have been a better president in case people had forgotten that point. So he's just trying to see, are you seeing my strong point, and are you seeing the weaknesses of my person? Now, the way to assess that point, Anne, is to look at what he says next, because he says that the truth will come out. Now, he's already campaigning, and he's saying that if you made a mistake during the elections, the last election, remember the reason why you should vote for me. So if the court rules in my favor, those of you who might have voted for my competitor, switch ends and vote for me. So the guy is already campaigning in the hope that the court will give him a favorable decision. But in terms of what truth is, it is also a very relative person. I remember when we were undergraduates at university, we had these two professors, Professor Raphael Joroga and Benayas, who used to tell us that, you know, this truth is not absolute, it is relative. So it depends on who is looking at truth. If tomorrow the court rules that probably Raila Odinga did not win the election, he might probably conclude that that is not truth. And who will say that is truth? So then if it is done vice versa, again it will be the same story. So to reach an absolute truth is really reaching the paradise where God is, and that is heaven. But it is not going to be possible for us to agree on what truth
However,
is.
credit to both the gentlemen, because they both have said so far that they will adhere to the ruling of the Supreme Court. So neither has given any indication that they will not follow through with what the Supreme Court says.
Well, the custodian of truth in this instance will be the Supreme Court. And whatever the Supreme Court rules, that's absolutely what we'll have to live with. He uses, the Prime Minister uses a technique of repetition when he talks truth, a couple of times in that clip. What he's trying to do, he's trying to get the audience to believe that he is a full custodian of truth. He uses it repeatedly. Yeah, he uses it repeatedly. But the way he projects his argument seems to be what I would call a straw man argument. It seems to be clutching. When you have a straw man argument, you clutch at anything that would seem to make you credible.
So for you, it's a weak argument.
I wouldn't say it's a weak argument, but I would say that
clutching at straws surely can't be strong, Paul.
It could be.
Paul, the nice guy here on the show.
Anyway, he could do it a little better.
He could do it better. I just want to wrap it up with this because time is running out. In fact, has run out. The question is this: you know, I saw on social media this week somebody tweeted something to the effect that, you know, the most unjust peace is better than the most just war. And there was a flurry of responses, as you can imagine, around it. And it seems really to capture what is the question right now, that, you know, if it is democracy on trial, as Raila has put it, then how far would one go for the cause of democracy? Or is the question, you know, what perhaps we've even heard from the president-elect himself, in as far as when he talks about, you know, the country has been peaceful, let us move on, and that kind of tone. Just quickly, your thoughts as we conclude on these two conflicting narratives.
I'll never choose any of them. I don't want an unjust peace because it doesn't last. I also don't want war. So what we want here is that both candidates and anybody who participated in this election, we now have an arbitrator, the Supreme Court. And even the lower courts, the lower jurisdictions are doing it with governors and senators. Let us have our faith in this, and let all issues which people are not satisfied with be ventilated through the legal system, and once they are decided, and we are okay. But this idea of overplaying the piano of peace is also not good, because people can even start thinking that you are hiding somebody, something. We don't want to look like we are hiding something. We want the Supreme Court to rule, and once it rules, we go by it, and the peace will come naturally. But let people not talk as if they have something they're hiding. So this piano of truth must just be, I mean, peace must be stopped. Let us say, let us have justice. And when justice is done and a ruling is made, you become peaceful, because you can't always have things your own way. Somehow, some will go your way, others will go other people's way. So that is where the justice is. In fact, just to cap it off, there is this guy, you know, called, I teach this in the university. There was this man called Socrates in Plato's Republic, who said that they argued for a very long time, and he said, justice is what is in the interest of the stronger. So whoever is going to emerge stronger in this contest will get justice.
Absolutely. It will remain on the evidence and the judges. Very quickly, your final thoughts, Paul. We must wind up.
Well, the Kenyan people have concerns, and the concerns, some are basic concerns. People want peace, people want justice, people want hope, people want to believe that they feel that they're part of this country. People want to feel that you know, the so-called Kenyan dream is accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
It's not whether it's not your background that determines where you're going, but the fact that you're born within the borders of this country, that you have certain rights, and that you have a chance to pursue happiness. I expect, and I would tell these two gentlemen, our president-elect and the prime minister, this coming week, think about that. Even as you move around, think about the aspirations that the Kenyan people have. Communicate those aspirations and those hopes. And after the ruling has been made on Saturday, agree to live by the ruling and engage in rhetoric that unites this country, bring us together. The next president, the challenges of our times are too numerous. We need a president who will bring us together and give us hope, hope, hope. Everybody, the Mama Mboga needs hope. The CEO in the boardroom needs hope. We all need hope.
But whichever way you look at it, there is pain. On Saturday, let's not say justice is not necessarily fairness. Justice is the interest of the stronger, as I've said, and whatever way you look at it, come Saturday when the ruling is made, there is pain and pleasure. So you have to prepare for each. For both, absolutely, and that is where we must wind it up. I thank you both, Professor Edward Kisiangani and Paul Achar to my far right, for joining us. I'm quite sure next week, once the legal process is over, we'll be able to discuss much more, because we toe a very fine line in these matters. We're taking a